It's a great honor not only to be here to talk about this book, which I will in a second, but also to be here under the auspices of the Marx Memorial Library. We're just providing the technical stuff, but you are the hosts, absolutely. So since we are pressed for time, let me just dive right into it and say that I commend to everyone here Capital in the 21st Century, not just as the work of two outstanding Marxist scholars who have long worked in tandem. I also commend to you its provenance. It emerges, as Sasha said, from a tradition of scholarship, the post-Soviet school of critical Marxism, which embodies what we may see as the best of Eastern or Soviet Marxism, which I think in critical ways, certainly if this book is anything to go by, has cleaved a lot closer to Marx and Engels' original understanding than the bulk of what passes for Western Marxism. Because that tradition, as I have argued in a series of writings, has lost touch with Marx's analysis of capitalism as contradictory value production. By pursuing what Nikolai Bukharin called a policy of theoretical reconciliation with neoclassical economics, more or less as soon as it emerged in the 1870s. The result has been a Schumpeterian lionization of capitalism as a Promethean system capable of ceaselessly developing the forces of production, suffering few, if any, contradictions, and basically unlikely to be overthrown, certainly of its own contradictions. This conception of capitalism involves the scandalous and entirely unwarranted dismissal of Marx's analysis of capitalism on the grounds that it suffers from a transformation problem. And the spurious claims that Marx was wrong about the tendency of the rate of profit to fall and did not say that it suffered from demand deficits. This is just mind-boggling to anybody who's actually read Marx. I've written a long series of articles discussing this, and I won't go into that. And I also emphasize this in my new book, Capitalism, Coronavirus, and War. Capital in the 21st century is refreshingly different. For Buzgalin and Kolganov, contradiction is real. Capitalism is contradictory. It needs to be studied not through some Marxist economics, which is a kind of an oxymoron anyway, because Marx and Engels engaged in a critical study of political economy and did not think there was a separate economy to be studied in separation from society. So staying close to Marx's original interpretation was clearly possible in the Soviet Union, and thanks to the post-Soviet school of critical Marxism also after it. For Buzgalin and Kolganov, as for Marx and Engels, what is at stake is the future of humanity, both in the sense of people and in the sense of what it is to be human. It is the sense that we find in Adam Smith's criticisms of capitalism for its corruption of what he called moral sentiments. And this critique of capitalism, which is also, of course, much more highly developed in Marx. This critique of capitalism is about this sense, not about my equations are bigger than yours sort of competition in much of what passes for Marxist economics today. And this philosophical sense is very much preserved, and I find that it pervades this work. I won't go too much into the details of what's in it because Sasha has already done a good job of it, but I did want to say a couple of things. First is the methodology, and it involves, in their words, the ascent from the abstract to the concrete, the application of the historical genetic approach owing to much to Hegel and the dialectical method. This permits them, I feel, to define the nature of late capitalism in a unique way as the contradiction through which market and capital themselves negate and undermine their own foundations. How like Marx this is. Let me just quote a very brief section from chapter 27 of volume 3, describing the implications of capitalism's arrival at the monopoly stage. Marx says individual capital now receives the form of social capital of directly associated individuals, in contrast to private capital, and its enterprises appear as social enterprises as opposed to private ones. This is the abolition of capital and private property within the confines of the capitalist mode of production. And of course, in line with this, we have an original definition of capitalism as monopoly capitalism, and moreover, as the undermining of the power of money, as moreover, the form that it takes after overcoming the undermining of the power of money, which was often called financial suppression in the post-Cold War period under neoliberalism, which has brought the regression of finance into usury and predation and a reliance on rent, etc., rather than profit. So this I also found very interesting, and also I would like to underline that Guzgalin and Kolgana apply very, very well the non-linear, the idea that capitalism's development is non-linear, that it can in fact regress as well. Thirdly, I found fascinating the transformation of the commodity itself through the acquisition of new qualities. Acquisition of new qualities by value, use value, and prices. This happens through the tendency towards the totalitarian control of the market, with enormous control and regulation exercised not by states but by large corporations, and which tends to pervade all spheres of human life, producing not merely goods, producing not so much goods but brands, and multiplying the falsehood of the forms generated. I think this kind of very human critique is very necessary, and you don't see it a lot. Obviously, the discussion of finance capitalism and the new nature of money based on fictitious financial capital manipulated by states and large corporations, creating what I felt was a very pregnant formulation, the illusion of profit rather than profit itself. And finally, we have a new form of capital itself, one that, to be sure, is extracting surplus value in the classical form from a larger industrial and wage-earning proletariat than ever before, but also features creative work centrally. And Busgalin and Kolgana argue that the exploitation of the creative worker involves not just the appropriation of surplus value that he or she creates, but also the exploitation of a certain amount of the universal creative effort of humankind, of universal cultural wealth. This result, associated as a rule not with a creative worker but with a subject of intellectual property, has no value, but it has a certain price, once again adding to the transformations of capitalism. And the general discussion of the creatosphere and the social creativity of the working class is also fascinating. And the result of all this, I find, is a very interesting contradiction between, on the one hand, increasingly vigorous growth of creative activity, and on the other hand, the formation and non-linear growth of the useless or false sector, by the way, a growth in which this creative activity is very heavily implicated. So these are the main elements. And what would I like to say about them? Just a few things. First, I would like to say that I would like to emphasize what I call the post-Soviet critical Marxist naivete, where I use the word naivete in the best sense of the term, as the ability to be shocked by the inhuman and a refusal to be cynical. It is also the ability to call capitalism's degeneracy when most Western Marxists are still lionizing in a Schumpeterian way as capable of endless productive development, and even seeing financialization as representing a form of regeneration and resurgence of capital, which of course is the opposite of the reality. As opposed to this, Busgalin and Kolgana unapologetically reinstate Marxism's original conception of capitalism's historical evolution, and account for its persistence even after reaching its highest stage through the methodological innovation of non-linearity. That is, why is it that capitalism is still persisting even after reaching this higher stage? It's persisting in extremely perverse forms. That's what one of the messages of the book is. Secondly, they comprehend the unproductive financialization as a regression. And I would like to add here that I'm particularly attracted to this argument because it's very close to an argument I've been making in my geopolitical economy, as well as in capitalism, coronavirus, and war, and an argument that I've developed more recently with Michael Hudson in our paper, Beyond the Dollar Creditocracy. and which, by the way, we are also talking about a lot in the new geopolitical economy hour that Michael and I have launched. Thirdly, they criticize unabashedly and fully and frontally the tendency of capitalism to create the simulacras of use values and the false needs and the false products that they create. And finally, I love the discussion of the exploitation of culture, knowledge, and creativity, which are the legacy of the whole of humankind, as I think Buzgalin Kolganov sees so clearly, which is actually the same way in which capitalism exploits nature, which is also the legacy of the whole of humankind. So in a certain sense, what capitalism is doing is exploiting both nature and second nature, which is often a word used for culture, both of which are raided to keep this degenerate form of capitalism going. And finally, I feel that Buzgalin and Kolganov are able to see what late capitalism has become 5 decades since Mandel coined this term, and over 3 decades since Jameson sought to base his theory of the postmodern on it. And they're able to clearly identify what it is, which is a system of rent-seeking. But I also had a few quibbles to register, but since we are short of time, I think I'm going to just end on a high note by saying the following, which is this is a marvelous achievement, I think, of Buzgalin and Kolganov, and they have provided us in the space of fewer than 250 pages the fruits of a lifetime of work on the undeservedly neglected Eastern periphery, these are their words, of Marxist scholarship. So let me close by saying that when, as a young scholar, I first became acquainted with Marxism, as presented by Western Marxism, since I encountered it in the West on the whole, I could not help sensing a whiff of disdain for Eastern Marxism, which was allegedly incapable of intellectual innovation or originality, or even of fidelity to Marx and Engels. I think if this book does nothing else, it will redeem the reputation of Soviet and post-Soviet Marxism. Of course, in reality, it is already doing a lot more. Thank you very much.
I'm Michael Hudson. I'm appearing here for the International Manifesto Group. If you like this video and ones like it, please subscribe. For more information, go to the address on the screen.